Hello and welcome to another amazing episode of Data Delicacies. I am your host, Arun Kumar, and this show is powered by Incentivio. We're the ultimate guest engagement platform for restaurants. Data Delicacies is the show where we bring together the best and brightest minds in the industry to talk all things tech, hospitality, what's going on in the world, how's it going to affect us, how's it going to affect restaurants. And I am super excited to have someone local on the show today. So as most of you know, as you can see from my jerseys here, I am from Toronto. So I do have another Toronto local legend on the call, the one and only Jamil Bhuya. He is the CEO and founder of Burgers and Fries Forever. And he has also recently started Small Fry Studio, which is his own consulting, fractional marketing experience provider. You can probably explain it better than I do, but I wanted to definitely shout that out, and we'll give you a chance to talk more about that during the show. But Jamil, welcome. How are you?
Thanks. I'm great. It's finally some wonderful weather here. And welcome back to Toronto. I understand you've been traveling quite a bit.
I have. I spend most of my time out of a suitcase, so somewhere in Pearson or somewhere over the U.S. skies. But thank you. I had the pleasure of coming to your restaurant twice now. So once myself and once I was able to bring a friend to your awesome concept, Burgers and Fries Forever. I had an amazing time. Some of the best smash burgers in the city. So if you ever come to Toronto, definitely go check it out. Jim, I'd love to understand, how that concept came about. And I think what was unique about that, I mean, in Toronto, there's a ton of restaurants, as we both know, and a ton of smash burger places. But I think the vibe you've created there is unbelievable, right? And it's not so much the food is amazing, but just the vibe where, it's rare to now go to a Toronto restaurant where you actually want to, especially kind of a burger joint where you actually want to sit down and chill and have that experience. So we'd love to understand kind of your thoughts as you put this together, and you are a marketing whiz. So would love to just understand, what kind of brought that concept together.
Yeah, so BFF has been going strong for about 12 years. We started in Ottawa. And I say this pretty honestly, what I started 12 years ago and what it is now is kind of constantly evolving. And I feel like that's life in the restaurant industry. But, getting into a super competitive segment such as burgers and fries forever is, you really have to differentiate. And while that's a word that's thrown around quite a bit, I truly believe in the power of like marketing, branding, and creating an experience or a vibe, as people call it. And really, what I tried to focus on was what is it that makes people tick, and why do they go to restaurants? Why do they care about my restaurant? Besides marketing great food, I always say like if your differentiating factor is great food, then like duh, that's why you're in the restaurant business. You don't ask a lawyer if they know the law, like you
Yeah.
assume they know the law. Can they interpret the law to you? Can they ease your anxiety? Can they let you know like, holy crap, I'm not going to get sued today. So BFF was always about that vibe and just appealing to different demographics and making it fun to dine in. Um, if you know what I mean, I feel a lot of burger places, especially here in Toronto, the economic realities is we have a lot of competition and high rent. So you don't want to be in a place where like half your you can only get one cheek on the seat, if you know what I mean,
Mm.
where it's like
Mm.
small, uncomfortable. So we really doubled down on that actually during the pandemic. We opened our flagship store in the middle of the second lockdown. I'm sure people have heard the horror stories in Ontario of all the lockdowns we had. December 2020 really put a lot of emphasis into the dining room, creating that vibe, lighting, design, and just making it like a nice place to just hang out that happens to serve amazing burgers and fries. Yeah.
Yeah, then and I'd love to talk about that. So, you open up a couple of spots during the pandemic, and then now we're kind of like a few years out of that. It seems like a lifetime ago. And for all the folks in the U.S. that are listening, our lockdowns here were quite rigid. I would say like San Francisco, I think had some of the toughest ones, so we're probably on par with that. How were you able to? I guess what were your learnings coming out of that? And then as you come out of this post-pandemic world, what were some of the things where you're like, listen, as we start to now create more of these experiential experiences in your location, how important is that? And how much of an emphasis have you put on that today?
I mean, I'm a firm believer in people don't want to be at home, right? Like I grew up not wanting to be at home. Grew up in a pretty conservative religious household. Any fun I had was outside the home. So I kind of carry that with me. And I think maybe call it a PR spin, maybe call it what you want, but I think there was like this over narration of like the future is delivery, it's takeout, it's all of these things. We got to shrink our footprint. And a lot of businesses pivoted to that. And I think the larger ones really, like I said, they took their PR teams on a bit of a journey and was like,
Mm,
the future is delivery, takeout, ghost kitchens. It's like, no, the future is connection. Humans still want to be around other humans, whether AI is taking over or the robots are coming or any of that stuff. Like all the pandemic did was really like force an industry that, in my opinion, is always a bit fossilized. The restaurant industry, as great as it is, there's an aversion to technology, there's an aversion to like marketing because really the reality is most restaurateurs are friggin' hard workers. They're operators, they're hands-on, they're dealing with change, they're dealing with crap, they're dealing with a lot of different things. So luckily I've had the blessing of kind of the blessing of success, which allows me to take a little bit more of a step back and think about the business holistically. And I think all the pandemic did was really accelerate the need for a lot of tools, applications, and technology, and even, the idea of a tech stack and the various integrations that it brings. I think all of those things just got accelerated because of the pandemic. And now there's a lot of innovation that's happening. And, AI or not, I think it really benefited the restaurant industry. And like I said, I think the biggest learning for me is that a lot of these, massive black swan events, let's call them, are temporary in nature. Human connection is still something that makes us
mm,
innately human, right? So I think if you really understand what it is that makes your customer tick, why they come to your restaurant, it's not just the food. If you can crack that code, that's, the recipe for success to a great business model.
mm. And I love what you said there. The future is connection. And, you know, I've been to your restaurants. I mean, your staff is phenomenal, like phenomenal. And how do you instill that belief into them as you bring them on to, again, to truly get that connection piece going?
I say this really honestly, I don't think we're the best at customer service. I think there's a lot of work that we can do, and that's like self-admittedly, but I think a big part of it is just transparency. Like staff are humans. Even though there might be a policy, sometimes, you might walk the line a little, and it's just about explaining to them like why decisions are made and not just making them. I've worked for a lot of bosses in the past. I was one of those people you didn't want to hire when I was young. Always juggling two or three jobs, all in the restaurant industry. I knew how to talk. I knew how to kind of make myself available. But you just got to be honest, like people aren't dumb. People still understand that like it is a business. And I think making them understand the benefit of like why it could help them, and understanding like their motivations, getting to know them a little bit more. Some people, it really bothers them when like a customer gets upset at them. So
Mm,
it's like, hey, if you don't like it when they get upset or like, they're grilling you or they're giving you the eyes, so to speak, it's like look up, let them know their ticket time, let them know that their order's coming, let them know you see them, right? A lot of people nowadays can just be head down, especially we're an open kitchen. So when your head's always down and you're not being acknowledged as a human, like just that acknowledgement will give them like an extra 5, 10 minutes where they're like,
mm,
cool,
mm.
they see me, they know I'm annoyed, so it's just like training them on like situations, but also like letting them know like the human implication again behind it and why the person on the other side cares, as opposed to always framing it as like, this is how the rules are, this is the business. It's like, listen, if you were on the other side and you ordered and you were told it's 10 minutes and now it's been 20, how are you going to feel about it? You're going to be pissed off. So if you now think of yourself on the other side,
Mm.
what would make you feel good? Someone to just acknowledge your anger and then let you know that, like, hey, we're
Yeah.
slammed. I'm super sorry. You see us working like monkeys, like just a few more minutes, we're rushing it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Boom. That usually is it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think sometimes just that small verbal exchange that can diffuse a situation. Right. And I think for, the type of restaurant that you run, you want that repeat business, right? And sometimes that small little human interaction can be the difference between someone never coming again or someone coming frequently or someone telling their friends about it. Because I think that's, word of mouth is, I think, how a lot of restaurants have been, especially in Toronto.
Yeah, exactly. I think word of mouth is everything. I'm actually reading this book right now called Referral Engine, and
Okay.
you know, uh, some of the most powerful businesses are actually not built on advertising; they're built on referrals. Because
Mhm.
referrals is a very innate human kind of interaction and desire. It's trust, it's authenticity. If someone comes to me and wants a loyalty platform, due to my relationship with you guys and just the wonderful customer service I've received, I'm going to recommend Incentivio, even though I've talked to other of your competitors. I don't know if I can say the name on this podcast. Maybe I'll save them the embarrassment, but a huge part of it is just literally the trust and the communication that's been built. And I think, getting people to understand that like that form of marketing is extremely powerful, that word of mouth really means a lot. It really supersedes a lot of other things. And I always say, because like again, I've run restaurants and I've been a restaurant manager, and I realize I'm not the greatest one, but that's why I'm more on the marketing, branding, and business dev side. But I always say like marketing's job is to bring people in the restaurants, ops's job is to keep them coming back over and over
Mhm.
again, right? So I kind of treat us as like, or my job is like top of funnel, and ops is like mid and bottom of funnel, where they're kind
Right.
of activating that loyalty and creating that great experience.
And where do you feel that restaurants, not in Toronto, but I mean, I'm sure you talk to folks kind of all over. Do you feel like they're almost too reliant on just tech alone?
I think what happens is, and this is, there's a couple of prospective clients I'm talking to right now in the States. I think a huge part of like this whole idea of tech is just people know operators, restaurants, groups, chains, whatever. They know that they need to get on board, but there's not like a strategy on what that means. So what tends to happen is, a lot of these businesses or products, they tend to offer this white glove service, this onboarding, and they actually, make the platform really seamless and easy to use. Then the restaurateur signs up and they don't really know what to do with it, right? And like I said, part of that is just a lot of, overwhelming things that happen in the restaurant industry. But the other part of it is actually not really knowing what the value of the platform is and what you're looking
Mhm.
for it. Because it's similar to like a recipe. It's like, or French cooking. Let's use that as an example. You have your mother sauces. You have your mother sauces, the roux, the bechamels, but then you can add on to them. You can customize them. You can
Mhm.
layer them. But you got to know like the fundamentals of like how they are, how to keep them stable, how do they taste, and how can you manipulate them. And I find a lot of restaurants don't quite understand the technology they're implementing. They know that there's a use case. They've been convinced that, they need it. And a lot of them, they know that they need it, but like pulling the analytics, what do I do with it? How does it
Mhm.
inform decision making? And knowing like when something's working and when it isn't, and what indicates that is working is very hard, especially because, a lot of these platforms, again, great analytics, but it's overwhelming.
Yeah.
And you feel like you need to be a data scientist, but in reality it's like there's a lot of like simple findings that if you just dig around and learn, that you can uncover, that'll bring you a lot of value. But once again, like there's so many technologies and tools and integrations that even getting them up and running and talking to one another is like its own challenge and entire department. So I obviously have a lot of empathy for what restaurant owners and groups go through, because it's one of the oldest industries out there, but it's going through such rapid innovation that
Yeah.
knowing like how to interpret things and how to like maximize it is very intimidating. And being an industry where like we consider ourselves warriors, you don't want to ask for help, you don't want to admit you don't know something, and you
Right.
don't want to seem to be like stupid, or all these emotional feelings that really have like large business implications over years. So I think understanding like why you're implementing something and like trying to interpret a simple outcome is like really powerful because then the technical leaders, the companies themselves can really help you find that. But I find sometimes there's not enough of that like
Mm,
dialogue happening.
mm. Yeah, interesting you mentioned that because I think, a few other guests on the show have talked about how there's such amazing tech, right, on the one hand, and then you have an industry that's primed for disruption because it's been, fairly old school for the most part and it's now starting to get on the curve. But there still seems to be almost that like bridge of gap of knowledge, right? Where, a lot of tech companies say, hey, you can do all this cool stuff and you can do this. And then to your point, a lot of folks are almost intimidated by the data because there's just so much of it now. And then, you hear AI and ML and all these different buzzwords. So is that what, through Small Fry, your new consulting service, is that kind of the gap you're trying to bridge now where it's like, hey, there's all this tech, how do you kind of get to where you need to and use the stuff in the right way?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things and one of the easiest analogies I could use is, especially I'll pay homage to the jerseys behind you, is kind of with restaurateurs and tech, what it could, and marketing as a whole, what it could look like is um, someone's passed you the ball and all your teammates are being double teamed, but the shot's definitely out of your range. You know you can't nail the shot, and you stop dribbling to yourself and you can't pass, you can't shoot.
Mm,
So what do? You're pivoting. You're constantly pivoting. A lot of movement, a lot of energy, a lot of time, but the clock's winding down. You haven't traveled any closer to the net. You're not getting help. You can't shoot and you can't travel. So you're stuck.
mm,
But you're using a lot of energy. And I find that's what happens with a lot of restaurateurs in tech and marketing as a whole, because marketing evolves so damn fast. It's unbelievable. The platforms, the technologies, all of these things, like what they teach you in school is so irrelevant.
mm,
It's so, don't even get me started on school. I don't even want to go there. School is, when it comes to marketing, pathetic. At a higher level, I'm sure there's great programs out there. I'm sure I'll get nailed for that sentiment. But on the restaurant side, like a big part of what Small Fry does is, and I'll give a use case example. Right now, I'm chatting with a group that has about 20 restaurants across four different brands, and they have a junior marketing team, and they have an IT director, but they don't have a actual marketing lead. So they got four juniors, great at execution, but it's like they don't have a coach, right? And the star player is not, again, I'm not saying IT is a one-man show in that sense, but they're not great at, dishing out the assists. So
mm,
now they're getting double teamed, and now they need a new leader on the team. So what I'm helping them do is they're great on the tech stack side. But what I'm helping them do is kind of create these A/B tests for scenarios where they're running Facebook ads. They also want to acquire franchisees. I'm helping them optimize their landing page through great design and through common like e-commerce conversion tactics. So I have a background in e-commerce, had a consumer packaged good brand that sold through Shopify for 8 years. So we ran a lot of these tests, but basically it's like, hey, I want to prove that if I ran a BOGO offer versus a spend X save Y or a free delivery between those three, I want to prove like which one's going to have the highest lifetime value. So I'll
mm.
use Incentivio as an example just because obviously we're talking about the tech platform and this is being sponsored by Incentivio. Referral fees are going to come back to me, right? Um,
Yeah,
what I
the
want to
20's
do
on the
is
way.
like I want to run various A/B tests with those various offers and allocate spend to them, but all in the same market and region. And
Mm,
Facebook will optimize the spend and eventually it'll acquire the lead, where the lead will use that discount code, uh, hopefully through online platform like Incentivio. Boom, the online order comes into my POS system. Now what I want to do is I want to actually tag that customer with that coupon name, so BOGO. Because I think BOGOs are cheap customers. I'm a BOGO user. I
mm.
love BOGO.
Yep.
If there's
Same
a
here.
BOGO, I'll spend it.
Yeah.
And in my mind, I'm like, I don't want to target me because I'm going after a deal. And we don't want to be deal focused. But there is an assumption there too that, hey, if we can track their user journey and they come in through the ad, they've never heard of us, we converted a cold lead, they get tagged with BOGO, maybe within 90 days, if we set up the right post-purchase drip campaigns, whether it's text messages or emails, creating aggressive offers to try to get them to order more in 30 days, maybe after 90, we've changed their habits and they actually, their average ticket might be lower than free delivery or spend X, save Y, but
Mm,
they're ordering way more. So their lifetime value over 90 days is actually like double the other guys, even though the cart values are higher, right? And now it's like, cool, we're getting some data, we're figuring out what works, and now we want to target more of that audience that actually has higher frequency, and we're noticing they're referring more customers. So,
mm,
oh, sweet, like they are now through other social tools that can maybe like track referrals. Oh, we're bringing in more customers and more leads. And oh, as those people go down the funnel, we realize those guys spend a lot higher. So, um, helping them kind of think about it like that, and even just, I've worked with a lot of agencies. So what I help restaurants do is save their money and not hiring an agency and creating kind of like a team of freelancers that can take care of a lot of these marketing tasks and make them spend less so that like everything's streamlined within their budget of their marketing spend.
mm.
Because like I said, a lot of agencies don't have the business case or they don't know what it's like to own a restaurant, much less have like a marketing ad fund that needs transparency. They just want to spend. And what
Yeah.
I try to do is kind of help them spend efficiently, but also save them money. So it's like, yes, I'll get you marketing impressions, but I'm also trying to like streamline the team. So a lot of that goes back to tech. You need the data to inform what it is you're trying to do. So it's even like coaching them to kind of have that mindset that like we're not going to get the info we need right away, but if this is the use case scenario we're trying to determine, this is
Yeah.
the info we need.
Yeah. I'd love to hear that. And to use your basketball analogy, I mean, where you're coming in and helping a lot of folks is, are you being that coach now? Are you an extra player on there? Are you the one giving them the alley oop? Like, how do you insert yourself in that mix?
I'm definitely more the coach because you usually work with larger groups that have marketing teams and that need to kind of
Mm,
again streamline or optimize. And to go back to this group with four brands and a junior team of four marketers, they were trying to figure out, hey, like we feel like the team is not as efficient as it should be. Maybe we need to kind of downsize that team and bring on an agency. But then when you look at the cost, it's like the agency is almost as much as that one team member, but
mm,
the agency has like a very narrow focus where it's just like top of funnel, it's ads, and they're going to do some content creation, but it's a pretty large fee for a limited scope because you're paying for that expertise. Whereas I'm trying to coach them to be like, hey, you already have four people on payroll. As you mentioned, they're great at executing. Let's try to like give them direction and have them take ownership of these projects, but like they need guidance. They need to know what's important and why. And it goes back to that conversation I have with my staff at the customer service level. It's like, hey guys, there's a very real scenario that if, from a marketing standpoint, we can't, meet certain goals and tasks, you might not have a job. Or
mm,
instead, what we can do is I can really give you guys direction and let you know that, why creating content, why doing these influencer collabs, why focusing in on like, some of these maybe more old school marketing methods
right.
work. One of the great examples I have, I gave to a recent client that I was just doing a discovery call with, and I love kind of just helping them. They're a new pizza place here in Toronto. Amazing pizza. They got tons of shout outs, tons of collabs, and they get these huge spikes in impressions, but it never lasts. And it's a Detroit style pizza. So I had to really help them overcome the fact that they've had flat sales for 6 months. And I'm like, guys, the reason why like the collabs and stuff are working from a marketing perspective is people aren't following your page. They're following them.
Mm,
And because they're following them, they're forgetting about you, right?
Mm.
Like you're the hot new thing, but like I always say, people need to be hungry. They need to hear about you like 5 to 10 times. They got to have money. They got to have the veto vote. Someone might be vegan or gluten-free because they don't have gluten-free dough. I was like, there's all these things working against you, but it's like you got to remind people that your restaurant exists
Yeah.
and that it's got good food because like dollars are hard earned. And I really had to kind of like reposition that you got to use like the third party tools, whether it's Uber, Skip, DoorDash, as like more of a marketing acquisition tool to help convert people, bring them down your funnel, and create like a new habit.
Right.
Because like I'm a firm believer, you can't change people's habits. You know, if I'm hungover or I've got the munchies late at night, like I'm not leaving my place, no matter
Yeah.
how much I love a brand. I'm getting delivery.
Yeah.
And so for them, it was just like, hey guys, let's think of like an acquisition tool differently. But then also what we want to do is we want to use AI because you're a one person team to bring you like high value orders. And what is more high value than pizza and catering? So
Mm.
let's use ChatGPT and set a 2 kilometer radius where you use it as a tool to scrape or go to Fiverr and find someone who can do this. I don't know how ethical or legal this is, by the way. You scrape business competitor information, emails, addresses, phone numbers,
Yeah.
with 10 employees or more, maybe you're looking for law firms, dentists, people who can afford catering
Right.
within like
Right.
a 2 to 5 kilometer radius, get 100 leads, and now work the phones and do the old school things like call the gatekeepers. And if you do this consistently every week and you can close 2 catering clients a month, by the end of the year, you're going to have 12 plus the referrals. And those businesses
Mm.
should be ordering every single month if they love your food and is as good, it's as good as you say you are.
Yeah.
So it's coaching and training them based off even what their resources are. With this guy, it's like, hey, he's a one-man show. His sales are low, they've been flat. It's like let's utilize AI to streamline like strategies so you can still do the things you're good at, which is schmoozing, getting on the phone, and closing deals.
Yeah.
So it's like the lead generation that I was helping with in that case. But
Got it.
it's all tailored, right? Depending on
Yeah,
what they
yeah,
need.
yeah. But I think that's it resonates for folks that live in any big city, and you have these big towers, and these companies are trying to get people to come back, and a lot of it's like, hey, Thursdays lunch is catered, or there's a day in
Right.
the week at least where a company is catering lunch to get people to come back in the office, and I think that's a huge opportunity to your point, where why not your restaurant? You know what I mean? Why defer to just going to the marketplace route and then just choosing whoever's there? And it sounds like kind of all the things we're talking about is to create some sense of loyalty back to the brand. So I want to flip that question back to you is what does loyalty mean to you?
I think loyalty means to me, I think a lot of restaurants, loyalty programs is seen as like a very transactional relationship. It's like, hey, I'm gonna get XYZ product. I'll order this many times and I get something for free.
Hmm.
Yes, that's loyalty to a degree, but that's like a strategy in loyalty. For me, loyalty actually means that like, you know, having like a real relationship, whether it's through social media, whether it's through like a great greeting, whether it's just someone remembering my name when I come up in line, or just being like, hey, like, how was the food the other day?
Hmm.
And it all boils down to that human connection, but it's about like, hey, facilitating that in like an omni-channel approach where, can you bring a little bit of joy or surprise to someone else's life? And I always say, like, if you think of it like a harp, can you like kind of string the emotional heartstrings of your customer through like a little bit of joy, whether it's like I said, just as simple as remembering the name, or even being like, hey, through a loyalty program, like changing it up,
Hmm.
as opposed to being like a stepladder approach. It's like, hey, boom, on this day, we're doing like a surprise collab with a local influencer. And, for our loyal customers out there, it's like it's a free burger for the first 10 or 20. It's like you want to create excitement in people's lives and something that's like out of the ordinary so that like they have a reason to like interact with you and not
Yeah.
transact with you, right? And
Right.
I think that's like the difficult thing because like I forget it with my own business sometimes. You become very like numbers oriented, and as you scale, you're looking at locations and sales, AOVs and labor targets, but it's like I was in the restaurant last week and I just noticed like one of my staff was going around wiping tables, but it's like, hey, take a moment to like look up and say hi to people.
Mm.
Like ask them how their meal is and smile. And like you never know what they might say, and it might bring a smile back to your face. And I think it's those little things that are loyalty, right? It's like moments of joy and delight that are like a surprise and that are like above expectations.
Yeah, and 100%. I think I look back at some of my most fondest dining experiences, and as much as I can remember the food to some extent, I think what really sticks out is like the people that you're with and then the service, right? I think, having people, hey, how are things? This is great. Hey, I recommend this. Like, try this. I think that is the stuff that always sticks with me.
Yeah.
Especially now because there's almost like an overabundance of options. I think optionality right now is not something we worry about,
No.
especially living in big cities. There's just so much, right? Like on any given street, there's hundreds of restaurants, and some of them tend to sometimes be cookie cutter, but for the most part, I think where you separate yourselves is from that humanization piece. I think you've touched on it a few times, which I hear a lot from folks on the show, but just also through my own experience. So just sticking on the topic of loyalty here, what like are you in part of any loyalty programs today, whether it's restaurants or otherwise?
Yeah, no, I'm on a few of them, and to be honest, it's like you said, it's one of those things where it's like you gotta be reminded to be loyal. Because like
Mm,
there's so many things happening in your life. There's so many things that are like pulling for your attention. And with social media and now the advent of AI, it's only gonna get worse where like the big data companies out there are going to know what makes me tick faster than I know, right?
mm,
Like what's controversial. Like the other day, I went on to TikTok on my own personal account, and the algorithm somehow just knew that I was like, oh, let's serve Jamil with some Canada cost of living stuff. And suddenly I was like, oh my God, my mortgage is so high. And holy crap, my paycheck has, oh my. And then suddenly I'm like, yo, I gotta relax and
mm.
I have to chill. So, yeah, like I said, even though I might be part of loyalty programs, like I don't even remember what I've signed up to at times because like signing up to something is not enough. Like I
Right.
have to be reminded to come back. I have to be reminded that like I'm part of this. Just like sometimes I gotta be reminded to be like a better person. I gotta be reminded to meditate. I gotta be reminded to
Yeah.
eat healthy and go to the gym. So I think, like I said, that's why it's really important when you're implementing so many things. It's like, what's the strategy behind reminding people why we do the things we do? Because like implementing them that's not a differentiator. Putting a loyalty program in place is not a differentiator. It's like everyone's got one.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So like why should I take up the precious real estate or give you my email in exchange for what? Like a step ladder of the more money I give you, eventually I'll get like a $3 product back for free.
Right.
Well, the cost of goods being $3. Not a great sell because like and I'll finish this tangent off here. I remember once there was this one restaurant. I had to buy 20 items. 20 items. The minimum spend was like $20 or something. And at the 10th item, I would get a free upgrade. I think
Mm,
it was a ramen shop. I'm pretty sure it was
mm,
ramen. And I would get a free upgrade for like $3. Or on my 20th, I'd get a free bowl of ramen. And then when I ran the numbers, I was like, man, I have to spend almost $500. And if this is a $20 bowl of ramen, at a third of the cost, so give or take $7, I have to spend $500 to get $7 back for free.
mm.
Screw this place. And
Right.
I suddenly became angry
Mm.
because I knew I was like, oh my God, like this isn't loyalty. This is an insult.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there, I mean, is there a loyalty program you use right now where you're like, hey, this is dope. Like I enjoy being part of this. It makes you want to come back. I like that feeling of like getting more points or getting to a new tier.
I think again, to be transparent, I'm not as like driven by loyalty programs personally,
Got it.
but the ones that have worked the best are the ones that are kind of, again, they remind me, they have some type of like communication cadence where it's like,
Mm,
it could be like a post-purchase drip campaign where it's like, hey, you haven't purchased from us in a while. Here's a little deal. Or it could just be like like I said, it's like an omni-channel approach where it's like, hey, maybe I got an email about like a new menu offer or just something that's happening because I need to be reminded, right? Or
Yeah.
maybe there's some form of gamification where it's like, oh, I think Ritual does a good job of this where it's like, hey, it's happy hours, buy something now, and it's like triple the points. And
Mm,
I'm like, okay, it's been a while, and like, this place is close by to me, and I am a bit hungry. And I haven't used this in a while. Let me activate this, right? It's like
yeah. Yeah.
it's a new incentive that's not like the norm. And like I said, it's like now it's pushing a lot of those human buttons where it's like, ooh, FOMO, it's something new. It's a
Yeah.
lot of those things. So it's like it's outside the box and you don't know till you try it, which is like what makes it even more difficult. And again, going back to appealing to restaurant owners and like their sense of like operational nuance, it's like it is a lot of shit to handle all at once. So I understand that on one side, but then on the other side, it's like you got to do it if you want to stand out.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's it's funny you talk about the ramen scenario because I have like a love-hate relationship with Air Canada. Like I travel a lot as we talked about and
Yeah.
some, Aeroplan member and like sure it's nice to get to like, 25, 50, 75K status and you get lounge access and you get your Nexus covered and you get, priority boarding and all this stuff is great. But then there's times where, you know, I'll accrue a ton of points and I want to then redeem it for a flight. And then, I'll do the math and how much I've spent to
Yeah.
accumulate those points and how much the flight costs. And I'm like, this doesn't make sense. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
these are just arbitrary numbers. And it's like the math isn't mathing. And that pisses me off. But I'm also kind of stuck because that's really like I'm so far deep with them and there's no really other optionality where like, okay, whatever, like it is what it is. But it's interesting where, I mean, Air Canada does a decent job. I think there's a lot of areas they can improve. But I'd say one loyalty program that recently started is with Kith. You know, Kith, the clothing store.
Yes. Yeah.
So they just opened the one in Yorkdale, but sorry, at Yorkville. But they have a pretty cool loyalty program where, the tiers based on the tier you get access to certain items that you wouldn't otherwise. So like there's certain drops they do where like if you're in this tier, you just cannot, it won't even show up in the app, which I think that kind of exclusivity makes me want to, hey, I want to get to this tier so I can get access to the new stuff. I think I like that, although it's, it's not the cheapest stuff, but I think just more, I think that sense of like exclusivity sometimes helps with it. But again, even when I go to the store, they say, hey, thank you for being a member of the loyalty program. You get this points. I think that piece just kind of gives you some sense of that, which is nice. Um, but yeah, I think to your point, it's a lot more places are having the loyalty programs. It's like, how do you really differentiate yourself? And I think that the humanization aspect is what you have to really put a lot of emphasis into. Otherwise, it becomes a very cookie cutter thing, right? Like, okay, points for slices, or you get a free coffee after your 100th coffee, and it's like, well, okay, cool. I saved $3 after spending 2 grand.
Yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned Kith, and I actually we used to have a loyalty program with a competitor, and you know, we're not with them anymore for a reason. But the program was basically, there was a lot of discount-based stuff, obviously, but
Mm,
then you get to a point where you could help us create like our next special. And we set it pretty high because we're like, no one's ever gonna do this. Like, no one cares enough to
mm,
make their own special, but we'll put it high enough that if they really want, like, they spent a lot of money to get there. We're pretty surprised. We had a few people do it, and we were almost like, what? Like I just it's like people can surprise you over what their motivations are and
mm.
even having some like ownership or involvement in something that they deeply care about. And I think
Interesting. So when
that's
you say special, you mean like creating their own menu item essentially,
burger. Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah, exactly. Like
oh, hmm,
they collaborated with us to actually create a burger, name it, get the ingredients and everything, obviously within like our parameters, but like
hmm,
it's just not something I expected people to go for. And it actually worked pretty well. People became really proud. They're really excited to do the photo shoot. And it was kind of like, again, it brought them some joy in their life and some ownership over something that, they had a lot of pride in. And
yeah.
again,
Listen, I'm not gonna lie, that would get me hyped. Being able to
yeah,
create my own burger and have that up there and be like, that's my burger or whatever. and then getting my friends to be like, hey, you got to go try the burger I created this place. I think that's a really cool thought. And I mean, personally, I mean, maybe I'm just a weirdo, but I think
No,
it's
no, and I think further to your point, it's like for loyalty programs and stuff, like I said, if you try to make it experiential versus transactional, it can really change the onus on like the company so that, you know, you're just trying to make it fun, like you said. Kith, let's take them as an example. Say it's a larger chain of restaurants that have like dining rooms and private tasting rooms. It's like, hey, like you said, maybe if you hit this quarterly cadence of spend of whatever to
yeah.
$500 every quarter. Every quarter we're gonna bring in like an influencer or a little local celebrity chef and do like a private tasting of our
Mm,
our next menu, right? It's like people want experiences. They don't just always want deals and discounts,
yeah.
despite what the economists tell you. People want like connection and like whatever the reason is. Maybe they want to brag, maybe they want to flex, maybe they just want to meet some new people or learn some new things. It's very hard to determine what human motivation is. It's very easy to know what makes us human. And I think if you focus on that with like data to back it up, you could really like tap into
Mm,
something that's, different, but not like it's also not rocket science, right? You just need that
yeah.
strategy and the implementation behind it.
Yeah. And honestly, I my opinion, it's a lot of it's about exclusivity. I feel because now
Yes.
optionality and availability is, if you have a cell phone, you have access to a lot of things now, right? So like the the playing field is level from that perspective. But what sets you apart now to be like, whoa, what's that person doing? This is cool. Is that like, hey, this is an exclusive invite only event, or this was
Yes.
like a this was like something that if you only had, if you were a loyalty member, you only get access to this, right? I think that, I mean, think about, I mean, I think lounge access for airports is the perfect example of that, right?
Yes.
Like having the lounge access versus you don't, you almost create, I mean, you create it's,
A
I hate to
class
say it, but like
war.
a class-based system. It boils down to that where it's like, listen, I have this. And you look at airplanes, right? You have business class, you have premium, you have an economy, right? So it's all
Right.
about how do I get to this next thing and how do I be part of that crew? Um, so love your thoughts. I mean, I kind of want to wrap up with one
Sure.
couple questions here, but you know, we talked a ton about tech and what's going on in restaurants and industry today. What are some of the things that excite you with some of the tech that's coming up? And how do you think that's going to impact the industry over the next couple of years?
I think what's exciting me when I look at it, at least from a marketing perspective, is kind of what I call the e-commerce effect on restaurants, the tech effect. But I think e-com, again, it's an industry I understand that I've been in, and I can draw a lot of parallels to it. But whatever is happening in e-com is trickling down to restaurants. And a lot of that is basically on the marketing front, not only like techniques on actual acquiring new customers, but like segmentation, customer data, CRM. And honestly, I'm not a huge analytics uh, nerd. I don't know if I didn't mean to offend any analytics people out there. Just like, I can read a P&L, but like I wouldn't enjoy putting one together and I know how important it is. But I think there's just going to be a lot of like information out there coming out that's going to be streamlined, even with like these aggregated data dashboards. Like there's so
Mm,
much tech out there that sometimes like going between all the dashboards for me can be like really frustrating. So there's going to be tech out there that kind of makes life easier for restaurateurs where it helps you interpret what the data is, right? So it's almost like a translator. And I think over time it'll really help you like pinpoint problems and issues and almost act as like a little virtual audit. Uh,
right.
and I think with like AI, there's just going to be a lot of kind of automations, recommendations, and a lot of like redundant work. Even I'm sure like when an integration breaks, because I know that's like the so many integrations out there, and when they break, it's like you don't even know how to troubleshoot or where to start. And I'm sure a lot of these things are going to get fixed and put together, but with this type of thing, there's always going to be some form of like there's going to be something that no one's thought of and some form of a technology that I think is going to be extremely exciting. And even in terms of like content creation,
Mm,
like when I started 11 or 12 years ago, it was so easy to like go in, I take a photo, I don't care about lighting, I don't care about editing.
mm.
I make up a caption on the spot and Bob's your uncle. Like my day is done. Now, like it's so competitive out there. The videos, the editing, the hooks, the filters, like
Yeah.
it's really intimidating and hard to do it yourself. And like usually as restaurateurs, like we're always trying to save a buck. Everyone knows about the notorious margins and like the failure rate. So it's like you want to try to have as much control over your budget, maybe not so much the content. And I think with AI from a marketing perspective, it's going to really like be able to generate and pump out content so you can like cross utilize it across different platforms and create these variations. But I think overall, change is always good. It's just being prepared for it and not like not being one of the last on board because with that you lose a lot of the learnings and times it takes
Yeah.
to adopt
Yeah.
and you just don't screw up enough to figure out the best way to use it, quite frankly.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I think, just where I sit, I talk to so many new platforms. And I mean, even just talking about the social media piece, I feel like my Instagram game is weak because I see some of my friends and I'm like, you guys, the filters and the videos. I mean, shout out my guy Sean Walchef, who does an amazing job on socials. But he's also, I mean, one of the things that he tells me all the time is just do it, right? Like you
Yeah.
said, don't be the last. Don't be worried about getting it perfect. Just do it because that's the best way to learn. And at the end of the day, content is content. And as long as you get eyeballs on whatever you're doing, the momentum will go and you'll start to get better and you can go from there.
And I'll say this one last bit on that point. Someone told me this because I'm in like a content mastermind right now, where I do a lot of content for my brands, and truthfully, I'm trying to build a personal brand, but like it's really hard for me to build a brand based off my own credentials. It's very easy for me to like, oh, something else, yeah, I can make a crazy video or something else, and
Mm,
everyone's saying the same thing to me. It's like, Jamil, shut up and start. You don't
yeah.
have to worry about getting a fancy mic. You don't have to worry about getting like a 4K camera or having things set up. Your audience loves to see the growth in your journey. And that's the same thing for restaurants. They want to be part of your story, whether they're local, whether you're making that, ethnic dish that no one else in the city is making, whatever the case may be. Like people want to be part of the story. They want to have
Yeah.
ownership over your brand. And like you said, you just got to get started.
Yeah. And honestly, what I think the type of content that I find myself watching more and more now is like as much as we're getting so into this edited, curated world of like media, I almost crave the more genuine stories, right? Like just someone's on their phone, just recording, going to their day to day, like that kind of stuff where it's like this is raw, genuine stuff. Because I think everything is just so curated, right? To a point where it's like, okay, well, like what is real and what's not. So I think to your
Yes.
point, I think seeing that just real kind of real life stuff that we can be like, hey, yeah, like that feels like me. I think that's what I look for.
It's kind of like fashion. It's like what was in the 90s when we were young is now in again with Gen Z, and it's like the same thing. People are not stupid. They know they're being sold to. They know there's a course most likely coming up or a coaching opportunity. So like you said, now people are craving the real stuff. They
Yeah.
just want to know like, hey, what's going on in your day? How does it look? Do you have the same fears and insecurities I have, maybe at a different level? People aren't dumb.
Yeah. And vintage is back in. Like it's great. Like vintage stores now are like the most popular thing. You see them everywhere. Like who would have thought, right? Like,
Yeah.
I if I had all my old stuff that I'd thrown away as a kid, all my 3XL Aniche shirts and Rockaware shirts, and I could have started my own store in my garage here.
Got those Fat Farm kicks that everyone had,
Oh
and
yeah, yeah. I had the
probably
G Unit hoodies, the G Unit sneakers. Oh, I had it all. But again, it's one of those things where like, this isn't gonna be cool anymore, and you get rid of it. But I think everything is cyclical, right?
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Well, Jamal, this was a lot of fun. I want to end with a quick lightning round, if that's cool. I'm gonna throw off, shoot off a few questions to you, just get some like rapid fire answers here.
Yeah.
So you're a big foodie guy. What do you prefer, a brunch party or a dinner party?
Ooh, dinner.
Why?
maybe I'm stereotyping here. Brunch just doesn't feel like I always say I have a grease tooth and
Okay.
not a sweet tooth, and I
Okay.
associate brunch with sweets, and I rather have like
Fair.
if you deep fry the shit out of it, I'll most likely eat it.
Okay. 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 Noted. Noted. You're a chef yourself. What's a home cooked meal you're famous for?
Oh, admittedly, I'm not cooking as much as I used to, so I'm actually really uh I might not be famous for it, but I'm actually really trying to like get back to my Bangladeshi roots
Okay.
and cook the stuff that like my mom would make in her sleep. Because I realized like not many people know about my cuisine.
Mm,
And my mom lives back in Ottawa. I'm here in Toronto, and like, damn, I miss it. And it kind of
mm,
hit me one day. I'm like, my mom's not always going to be around. And I can't always like rely on her. So I'm actually really like diving into what that means and trying to make mistakes. And you've got a brown mom, like I'm trying to get her to give
yeah.
me goddamn measurements on recipes.
Yeah. Yeah, then it's all in here.
Yeah.
I can't eyeball it like my mom does. I try, but it doesn't end up being good. You have obviously good musical taste when I come to your restaurants. Is there an album you currently have on repeat?
We don't have an album, but I'm always like, guys, we
No,
gotta
I'm talking
go.
you, not your restaurant. I'm talking you. Like, and you're going down day to day. You got your AirPods on. Like, what are you jamming to?
Oh man, literally like 90s hip hop, gangster rap. I oddly really like 90s grunge as well, like
Okay.
Nirvana, Alice in Chains, a lot of those old school ones. And I really like studying or meditating to like kind of deep house techno, like not that many lyrics, a
Yeah.
lot of bass, um, just because like it allows me to focus and not get overly caught up on the message and
Right.
just like feel. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's a little all over the place,
Yeah. No,
depending
hey,
on my
listen,
mood.
no. That's I'm my. If you look at my music history, it's all over the place as well. So final question, actually, two things. Firstly, what's your current favorite restaurant in Toronto that's not yours, that you want to shout out, and maybe if you know the owner or the chef or a specific dish at that restaurant that you want to shout out as well?
Yeah, I mean, oh, this is a really hard one. Why? Because I there's so many damn good restaurants out here, and maybe I'll shout out a few. One of my boys, Chef Mahir at Curryish Tavern, he is making magic. He's doing to desi food what many people have not done. Um, and he's got like he kind of feeds me. He's got a lamb smash burger, but his brunch, like
Ooh.
some of the stuff he's done, ironically, this is the guy who picked dinner over brunch, but like he's just got so many different like things that are so familiar from my background, but also so familiar in a non-Indian setting that it's really hard to choose. Everything on his
Mhm.
menu is like just very unfamiliarly familiar. So I'll shout him out. He's been a great friend and I love his food. Now I'm in the East and like there's a couple like banging pizza places. So Slow
Mm.
Hand and Descendants both doing Detroit style pizza.
Yeah, Descendants is dope. Yeah.
Love that stuff. And again, I could go on and on, but I think
Yeah,
I'll
yeah,
stop with
yeah,
that.
yeah. I'll one last thing I just want you to share is, a lot of our listeners and viewers here will be from the States. And every time I go to the States, I very proudly say I'm from Toronto. When I tell them, a lot of them are like, hey, I've never been to Toronto or I haven't been to Toronto in some time. I've heard good things. I'm always shouting out the food scene, the vibe here, the bars, cocktails. I mean, it's multicultural, melting pot. But if you had to explain the vibe of Toronto and why people should come here, how would you say it?
Besides it being like a world-class city with world-class amenities, you got beaches, you got the lake, you got, towers, a skyline. A lot of people compare it to New York of the North, and ironically, there's a lot of film studios that literally portray it like that. But the thing that most people don't know about Toronto is, yeah, it might not have the cultural heights from a food perspective of like the New Yorks, the Londons, the Parises, but Toronto's now like the most diverse city in the world. I believe there's over 200 ethnicities. And
Mm.
the one thing I've learned is the breadth of food, the diversity. If you want a home cooked meal from a place you've never heard about, or back home and you just couldn't find it, there's a damn good chance you're going to find it in Toronto, made with a lot of love, super authentically, and at a damn good price in some random hole in the wall that if Mr. Bourdain was still around would be like,
Yeah.
holy crap, you've got to eat here. And I think that's like what makes Toronto super special. It's like this bi it's this polarizing like disparity of like high end and like humble that's delicious to eat through.
Yeah. Listen, I couldn't have said it better myself. So, Jamil, thank you so much for being a guest on Data Delicacies. You shared a lot of cool things. I just kind of want to recap, what I took away as the highlights from our conversation. And, I think you said the future is connection. I love that. We talk about all this tech that's coming up and we're so engrossed in our phones and all this stuff, but really human connection and how we communicate with each other can make the difference and really make things a memorable experience. You talk about referrals, word of mouth becoming again cyclical, right? Where like we went down this SEO path and digital and all this stuff, but now word of mouth is now becoming almost like the highest value of like, hey, I want to go try this thing because my friend said it's great or whatever. Um, you talk about that. We talked about kind of the divide between where the industry is today and what the tech is. That gap, it's almost like they have a basketball, they're just pivoting and they have nowhere to go, right? And with your consultancy, Small Fry, you help as a coach guide them to where they need to get to the basket to get that bucket. And you know, with all this marketing stuff that's going on, I think people forget that they have to remind people that their restaurant exists and they have good food, right? And that's really the key of how they do it. And I think the overall theme of what you talked about, which I love, is humanization, right? I think that's what sometimes we get too caught up in the tech side of things, where it's really tech is here just to augment the human experience, not to replace. And I think you put that in a really, really good way. So before we wrap up here, Jamil, how can folks find you, and how can you want to share the thoughts about Small Fry as well? Like, how can people find you personally, and also if people want to chat through Small Fry and get some help, what's the best way for them to reach out to
Yeah, so obviously you can find me on LinkedIn, JamilBhuya. So that's Jamil Bhuya. Smallfrystudio.com. So that's been launched. You could also just DM me through Burgers and Fries Forever, all one word, BFF, Burgers and Fries Forever. And yeah, I'm pretty easy to get a hold of. If you ever want to chat, would love to do that. The one last thing I'll leave this on is I've had quite a few conversations with some pretty smart people in AI, and I've been told that despite what AI is going to do, and it will eliminate jobs, in the future, people are going to be willing to pay more for human connection,
you?
and actually, they're going to value that uh, and put a higher price point on that. So do with it what you will. I thought it was pretty interesting. It kind of validated a lot of my feelings. And yeah, maybe, Small Fry can help you fend off the robots and still make profit. See you later. Bye.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Jamil, thank you again so much. I think what I love most about this industry is that, the people I get to meet, I get to create amazing relationships and friendships out of it. So I'm glad that we got connected. Glad you could join the show and share, your amazing story and kind of your thoughts on the industry. And again, you're going to do big things with Small Fry, and I'm excited to see, kind of where that takes you. That wraps up another amazing episode of Data Delicacies. We are still have some limited spots available for the episode. So if you're interested, reach out to me directly on LinkedIn or reach out to the team at Incentivio. We're happy to have you on. Otherwise, folks, this was an amazing, amazing episode. We learned a lot of great stuff. Until next time, peace.